I will get you, Josh. No, I will get you. No, I will get you. And welcome to part 2 of your Key People review. And we will start with Edward Thorndike. If you cheaters are tuning in right now for the first time, you better go back and listen to section 1 because we're gonna get them cheetahs. Oh yeah, we're gonna get them cheetahs. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, today we continue with, well, I say today, it's a different day than yesterday for me, but it could be the same day if you just continue playing these. We're going to talk about operant conditioning. We ended with classical conditioning, going through all the involuntary learners, but now we start with operant conditioning. It really begins with Edward Thorndike, much like classical conditioning began with Ivan Pavlov. Edward Thorndike did the experiment on cats in a puzzle box. You know what? Let's do, well, yeah, actually, just to remind you, somewhere in this box, just draw a cat's face with whiskers. I don't care what your artwork looks like, but that will help you remember the puzzle box and connect it to Edward Thorndike. So anywhere in the box, just draw a little cat with some little whiskers here. So he stuck the cat in the puzzle box, stuck cat food outside of this box, and the cat would kind of meow meow, kind of move around and accidentally trip the lever. They would open the door, and then the cat would go ooh and go get the food. Stick the cat back in the box, lock it up, put cat food out again. The cat would repeat the behavior, but do it quicker the second time it learned that when it was rewarded to repeat the behavior. And that is called the law of effect. So when rewarded, you are likely to repeat the behavior. Okay? And this leads B.F. Skinner to developing operant conditioning, the operant conditioning principles that we're now going to talk about, like positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement and all these things that we need to go over that you are definitely going to see on the AP exam. And you know, with B.F. Skinner, here's the deal. You're going to see one of these things. I would admit maybe two, but for sure one. And it might be a schedule of reinforcement. It might be a reinforcement principle. It might be something about timing. But B.F. Skinner is always tested. It's just going to be, what are we going to see? You know what? Let's get them cheaters right now. Let's get those cheetahs. I need you to have some water. Or you could use your spit. That's fine. You could use your spit. Just a little bit of water, or you like stick your finger in a little cup of water, and I want you to stick it on the bee, just a little tiny drop. Not a lot, not heavy, just a little kind of tiny drop. Put it on the bee in B.F. Skinner. Okay? So just put a little tiny drop of water bloop, on the bee in B.F. Skinner. Cheaters are never going to see that. They're never going to see that. It's going to be slightly wrinkled there when it dries. It'll be slightly malformed, the paper. The cheater will never see that. We're going to get them okay, sorry. All right. So operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is voluntary learning as opposed to the involuntary learning that takes place with classical conditioning. Classical conditioning, which is the pairing, the association being formed between two stimuli that you kind of have no control over. Well, with operant conditioning, you do have a sense of control over where you're behaving to, and your behavior can be modified by the rewards or the punishments that you're going to get. And we call these reinforcements or punishments. And we'll start with positive reinforcement. So I do like you exchanging those words, reinforcement meaning reward, and punishment is going to mean punishment, but reinforcement means reward. Remember, with operant conditioning principles, positive does not mean good, and negative does not mean bad. Positive means that you are getting something, and if it's going to be rewarded, you're getting something that you desire, something that you want. And we'll just use job performance example. So you're working at McDonald's and the boss gives you a longer break because you're doing a good job. The boss gives you a pay raise because you're doing a good job. You know what? I got to tell you this story. So the first time, and this is an example of positive reinforcement, so I'm not getting off on a tangent here. I told you I worked at McDonald's. My first job in high school when I was 16 years old. They did not give raises for every 6 months. You couldn't get a raise until 6 months went by. So my 6-month review came up. And the manager, she was from Germany. Her name was Perriette. I still remember her day. She was hardcore, man, hardcore. She called me back to her office. She said, Ryan, you're one of the best employees here. We are so proud of you. We're so thankful you're here. I mean, and I knew I've been working hard, doing a good job. She's like, I'm so excited to give you this raise. And she's like, you've earned it. She's like, you'll see it on your next paycheck. And I'm like, holy cow. What kind of raise am I going to get? I've been working my butt off. I've been doing a good job. So I wait 2 weeks for my paycheck. I open it up. Minimum wage back then was $4.25. So I was making $4.25 an hour. I open it up, and my new hourly wage was $4.30. I got a freaking 5-cent rate, a nickel. After her building me up, like, what do employees get who suck at their job? I don't know, man. I felt defeated. That was not much of a positive reinforcement for me. And this is what makes it voluntary as well. It's what you desire. But if you see a scenario on the AP test, think, will the average person, would they want this, or would the average person not want this? So reinforcement, positive or negative, is going to be something that is rewarding to us. Got to get that in your head. Negative means we're taking away something from you as a reward. So maybe your boss would stick with the McDonald's thing, takes away the bathroom duty. Like maybe you've had to clean the bathroom. Oh, that was horrible. I remember doing that. You don't want to hear my stories doing that. So maybe you had to clean the bathroom every day. Boss says, you've been doing such a good job, we're going to give this to the new person. Or maybe you had to flip the burgers. You don't like doing that. You want to work drive-through. So they're saying, you know what, you don't got to flip burgers anymore. We're going to take that away from you, and we're going to allow you to go work the drive-through now. So reinforcements are always rewarding. Always rewarding. Positive means you're getting something you want. Negative means you're having something taken away that you don't want. It doesn't matter what the behavior is. You can be rewarded for bad behavior. You can give a kid a lollipop for acting like a fool. You can laugh at your friends when they're acting like an idiot in classroom, and that could be a reward to them if they like the attention. So don't think about the behavior. Is the person getting something they want? Are they having something taken away from them that they don't want? Then we have reinforcements. Now we get to punishment. Well, punishment, positive, is going to be getting something that you don't want, which is going to decrease the behavior. Punishments decrease and weaken the behavior that you have. Reinforcements strengthen the behavior, make it more likely that it will be repeated. So positive means you are getting something that you don't want. Longer shift, more duties on your job. Maybe you have to go clean the bathroom. That would be a positive punishment. Negative punishment is where you have something taken away from you that you like. This would weaken your behavior. So the boss takes away your drive-through duty and sends you back to cooking hamburgers. You really like drive-through too. Man, that was fun. You really like hours because you want your paycheck. They take away hours from your shift. This has happened to some of you in your job. That's a negative punishment. We have another name for negative punishment, and that is called omission training. So the other name for negative punishment, because it's kind of an odd sounding word, is omission training. You might see either or on the AP test. Just be aware. 90% of the time they're asking about the reinforcements on the AP exam, and same on the FRQs when we've seen them on there. We rarely see punishments. We did on that Dimitri Linda question. We saw punishment, and you could write about positive or negative punishment on your test there. All right. Now we get to the schedules of reinforcement. This is just about timing. That's it. So we have fixed ratio and variable ratio. Then we have fixed interval and variable interval. Let's go over each one of these. And again, a reminder, you're writing all these things down. Everything has to be in your box that we're going over here. Fixed means the same. And ratio is the amount of times that you're doing something. So it's the behavior that you're doing. So fixed just means the same amount of times you do this behavior, we're going to reward you. So every 5 times you get the reward. So every 5 hamburgers you cook, you can go take your break. Or in a classroom, every 5 A's you get on a quiz, your parents give you money. In Skinner box, every 5 times the pigeon clicks the pecker to get the food, then they get a reward. They get the pellet that comes out, the food pellet. A variable ratio just mixes, I thought that was going to be next. A fixed interval, intervals are just dealing with time. So it's the same amount of time that passes where you get your reward. Every 5 minutes that passes, you can go get a drink of water if you're at work.
With work, typically like a paycheck would be a great example on an FRQ. You work for 2 weeks and you get your paycheck. As a teacher, I work for we get paid twice a month. So I work for 15 days and I get paid. Work for 15 days and I get paid. That's a fixed interval schedule. So anytime you're dealing with time, and it could be seconds, minutes, hours, weeks, days, years, decades, centuries, be careful. It's going to be an interval. It's always going to be an interval. The variable just means we changed it up. So ratio is the amount of times we did the behavior. So variable ratio might be, so the first time the pigeon pecks the lever, he gets a reward. Then he does it 3 times, he gets the reward. Then 5 times, he gets the reward. Then 2 times, he gets the reward. Just mixes up the amount of behaviors that he is doing. And then variable interval is just a different amount of time that passes where you get the reward. So you might get paid in 2 days, and then 5 days, and then 1 week, and then 1 day. It just mixes up. If you ever see the word on average, it's going to imply a variable schedule. So you might see up here an average of every 5 times you get an A, you get a reward. That's going to imply variable, because to have an average of 5, you have to have some responses below 5 and some responses above 5. All right? And that is B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning. Know it well. If you are still confused by some of this stuff, it will be well worth your time to open up your textbook and read the chapter on it, or watch a video on YouTube about it to get a different perspective than what I have taught you. This is going to be on the test. You will see at least one of these items on your test on Monday, possibly 2. You want to get it right because we know it's going to be on the test.
Hi, my name is Elsa, and I just want to say I'm going to freeze you if you try to cheat, because I don't like them cheaters. No, I don't. I do not like those cheaters. Hi, I'm Princess Anna. Or Anna. Listen to my sister or she will freeze you. Don't cheat.
I'm starting to get concerned about myself. If you feel like I might need psychological help, just let me know. Kind of pull me to the side and say, hey, you kind of went a little... Coleman, cognitive map. With the cognitive map, so he had mice in a maze, and they would get to the cheese, and then they would seem to get there quicker the second time. He developed this theory and this concept that we as human beings, when we go from point A to point B, we create what we call a cognitive map. So cognitive is thinking, and it's this map inside of your head, but this is very important. It's a map that you can visualize, or that you get a mental picture of, and it is going from point A to point B and knowing where the route is. So if you see cognitive map on your AP exam, make sure you have those 2 concepts. So point A to point B, we're going somewhere, and we can picture the route inside of our head, just like the mice could in his theory, as they were going through the maze quicker the second time and then even faster the third time. So know that. On the mock exam, you had cognitive map for James in his driving test. To get the point, you had to say that he had driven the route before, and as he was driving it again, he could picture it inside of his head and knew where the turns were, or was comfortable with it. That's the example. But if you didn't say some synonym of visualizing it in the head, then you would not have gotten the point. Okay? Cognitive map. We're going to kind of bounce around here. Noam Chomsky, language acquisition device. So when we're talking about nature versus nurture and how we learn and acquire language, we either learn it or we're born with being able to do it. And of course, nature would say that we are born with it. I got nature versus nature there, don't I? And then nurture would say that we receive it from the environment. So going back to B.F. Skinner says, hey, we learn language. We learn that from the people around us as we are being spoken to, as they reward and punish us for the language that we say or complete sentences. That's the nurture view of language acquisition. Nature view says that we're born with this device, and this is Noam Chomsky's theory, inside of your head that turns on in this sensitive time period, and we're going to put 18 months here. Around 18 months when you were spoken to, this language acquisition device turns on and allows you to be able to speak and acquire and learn the language. And Chomsky said, listen, language is far too complex. We can be so creative with it, and we can even create languages that there's no way that we could possibly learn it all from the environment. You have to have this innate ability to be able to do so. I would only think you would see the language acquisition device, or where I've seen it on the AP test, is connecting it to nature, knowing that it's innate. Let's write that, which means born with. So it means that you're born with it. You're born with the ability to speak. But if you miss that sensitive window like Jeannie, and you're not spoken to during this average of 18-month to 24-month period, then you will not be able to acquire language. You may not ever be able to speak. All right, Herman Ebbinghaus, I would like you to draw the forgetting curve. You don't have to go as much detail as what we see on the graph that I've given here. You can just kind of sketch it. But let's talk about the forgetting curve a little bit. Over the course of 30 days, and you need to know that on average, that would be something that you need to remember. If we do not reuse information that we learn, there's a very small likelihood that we will remember it, that it gradually just goes away. It's not that it's not in your long-term memory. Most scientists believe when you learn something that's put in your long-term memory, it's there forever. But you might not ever be able to retrieve it if you don't use it again. So as I teach you something new in class, or you learn something new in class, within 20 minutes, we very quickly, see how steep this graph is, we very quickly lose the memory. And it was probably in our short-term memory, and something came in and kicked it out. And then 9 hours, much less likely, 2 days, less likely, and then, of course, 30 days, there's an 80% chance that we're going to forget it, or even an upper 90%. All of these terms that we're going over right now, you've already heard once. Maybe you've heard them twice. Maybe you've heard them 5 times. When you go back and relearn something, the graph isn't as steep the second time. You don't forget as quickly. The third time, it's not as steep. You don't forget as quickly. The 5th time, it's not as steep. You don't forget as quickly. That's something really important to remember. And that's why we're doing this right now, so that you can remember these things on Monday. And right now, if it's Sunday night and you're listening to this, these things you're more likely to retrieve these things. I'm sure we've already gone over something that you completely forgot about. Language acquisition device that we just went over. We don't remember what that might be. All right. And that's the Ebbinghaus curve. I'm going to leave that up here for just another second. Let me kind of, while you're drawing that graph. Oh, I know. I'm going to do a beatbox too. We're going to get them Cheetos. We're going to, yeah. We're going to, yeah. We're going to get them Cheetos. Cheetos. I'm sorry that you had to experience that. Wolfgang Kohler. Wolfgang Kohler, a German psychologist and scientist who did research on chimpanzees in a warehouse. Bananas hung from the ceiling, chimps from the wild, stuck crates around the warehouse, then just observed to see if they could figure out how to get to the bananas. And they did. And it seemed as though the chimpanzees were solving the problem inside their head before they would actually go do the solution to the problem. And they learned something new that they had never been taught by anyone else. They'd never seen humans do this. They'd never seen other chimps do it. They had taught themselves something new. So insight learning is learning on your own while solving problem. Sometimes you're faced with new situations. It could be a relational situation. It doesn't have to be a problem in mathematics that you're looking at. It could be a situation with swimming, in a lake or something where you're faced with some new circumstance and you have to figure out something new to do. and learn it. You know what? This just kind of comes to this is a term that's not related to Wolfgang Kohler, but let's just talk about it because I want to make sure that you know this term. Functional fixedness, and I'm going to connect it to insight learning in just a second, is where you only see an object for its intended purpose. So you only see scissors for cutting paper, right? You only see a marker used for writing on the whiteboard. Well, if you're faced with a new problem where you have to get out of this tight situation, like you're locked in a room, and you use insight learning where you come up with a new solution in your head, it might be very difficult if you have functional fixedness, because you might have all these objects around you that could help you, but you don't think of them as objects to help you because you only see them for their intended purpose. You only see the scissors being used to cut something. So if we can get around functional fixedness and we can see these scissors being used as a device to break a lock somehow or break the window, then we've solved a new problem. We've learned something new about scissors. All right, insight learning was the key term that I wanted to talk about here. That's Wolfgang Kohler and chimpanzees. All right. Elizabeth Loftus, false memories, misinformation effect. She is the one who did the studies on creating false memories inside people to prove that it could be done. She did all these different experimentations, like the kid lost in the mall, where they would bring adolescents or young adults in. They would give them some truths, feed them some truths about their childhood, and then implant this false memory. And many times, almost half the respondents would have this false memory created inside of their head, and it would become their own, and they would remember something that never even happened to them. And so the idea is that this occurs to us. The misinformation effect, or known as false memories, can happen through the power of suggestion or just the way people speak to you. She did the experiment on a car crash. Remember that she had two groups of people. One group of people, they all watched the same car accident, but one group was asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. In fact, let's write those two words. Oops, what did I do there? So we have smashed, and then the other group was asked how fast were the cars going when they hit each other. Well, the group that heard the word smashed recorded significantly faster times that the car, or faster speeds, that the cars were going when they saw this accident, even though they were all watching the same accident. So it's a suggestive word that implies more force when something's being done. So it changed their recollection of the memory. In fact, the group that heard the word smashed, many of them recalled broken glass that was never present in the video that they saw, that had been created inside their memory. They weren't lying. You hook them up to a lie detector, they're going to pass. They're not lying. They are telling the truth. This memory is very, very real for them. So misinformation effect, you see that? We are talking about false memories. Suggestibility is one thing that can create false memory. Dreams can create false memory. Hypnosis can create false memories. Just hearing something, a memory from your brother that he tells you when you were younger, you can make it your own. Or seeing something on television, just being exposed to different stories can create false memories. All right. Continuing along here to George A. Miller. And this is just to remind you of short-term memory. And I think it's good that we bring up short-term memory. George A. Miller is the one who came up with the magical number 7, which means that our short-term memory can hold a average of 7 items inside of it, and then those 7 items kind of go in and out all day long. But I wanted to remind you with this slide all of the different memory banks. So let's add those and go over. The first one is sensory memory. This is where it all starts. So everything that comes in through our 5 senses, we process for a nanosecond, and if we pay attention to it, and that's the big thing, if there is a tension, then it goes into our short-term memory. And we also need to be reminded of this. There's another name for short-term memory, and that is called working memory. You could see either or on the AP test. I've seen either or. Because it's constantly working, there's memories coming in and memories coming out. If we give it more attention and repetition or concentration, then it goes into long-term memory. Otherwise, it just goes away. So it starts with sensory memory, then goes to short-term memory, then eventually to long-term memory.
and that is research on memory.
Don't try to cheat on this packet. Don't cheat.
Oh, you want to hear my story about when I cheated? So I was a junior in high school, and I was in honors chemistry. And if you haven't figured this out by now, I'm not left brain. I'm much more right brain than my left brain. Left brain, I'm not even sure is functioning most of the time. So yeah, I wasn't prepared for a test, and I sat next to this cabinet. So I kind of slightly opened this drawer, and I put the answers to the test, or like some study review material, in this cabinet that I could see when I looked down into the cabinet. So during the test, I kind of take a peek down there, and the teacher says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." And I got scared, and I reached down and I grabbed the packet, and I bundled it up in a ball. Let me act this out. And I did this. And then I ran out of the room. This was stupid. This was very, very stupid. Oh man, I just ruined my daughter's Elsa and Anna. Don't tell them about that. Anyways, so I run out of the room and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do? You know, I cheated. It's the first time I ever cheated. Last time I ever cheated. It was such a horrible experience. I was so embarrassed. Teacher comes out. He's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What's going on here?" And I was like, and I just confessed I cheated, and I said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to respond. I was busted, man, busted." Got a 0 on the test. Ended up failing honors chemistry that semester. The only class I failed in high school. Because of it, I deserved it. But I'm glad that I was punished, weakened the behavior, and now I despise cheetahs. I mean, I understand because I was there, right? I don't have empathy. I hate you. I hate you.
The video's halfway over.
There's some theories of emotion now. And so why we have emotions? Remember, there are 3 big ones: the James Lang, the Cannon-Bard theory, and then the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. So we'll just start with the Cannon-Bard theory. Walter Cannon. Walter Cannon believed that our emotions derive from the stimulus, but it all explodes at once with our body happening and responding at the same time. You know what? This really is kind of difficult to explain before we go to the James Lang. But I realize that on my notes here that I don't have William James again because we talked about him in the beginning and we didn't talk about the James Lang theory when we covered William James. So what I want you to do is go all the way back to the beginning of your packet. It's like second page. And find William James. There we go. Okay, so I'll give you a chance to get there. I think it's like second or third page here. Look, I'll get the packet in front of me. Oh, yeah, second page here. Okay, so found William James. Let's go ahead and add to this now the James Lang theory of emotion. Lang was just someone else who came up with the theory at the same time. James Lang theory of emotion. James Lang theory of emotion says that the spider causes the body to respond, and that causes us to be afraid. So what we tend to say is the spider made me afraid. Well, James Lang said, remember, this is all about behaviorism and functionalism, right? Overt behaviors that we can physically see. So I can see you trembling, I can see you shaking, I can see you backing up from the spider. He said, no, it's what your body's doing that's causing you to have your emotion of fear. So if you remember that William James is the James in the James Lang theory, you just think about behaviors that we can see, and that's going to be the body's response to the stimulus that's causing the emotion. So, yeah, I see the cake, but it's not the cake that makes me happy. It's my body's smile or my smile on my face that makes me happy. I mean, and it makes a little bit of sense here because, like, if you see a spider and you walk towards it, you're not afraid, right? You're going to have a different emotion. So it's not the spider. It's what your body is doing according to the James Lang theory. Okay, now let's go all the way back to Walter Cannon. Here we go, Walter Cannon. This is on page 9. Okay, now that I got the packet in front of me.
So Walter Cannon believed that we see the spider. I'm going to have an example here. The spider. And then at the same time, we have body and emotion. So at the same time, we're going to tremble and shake and be afraid. So that's why I told you, like the cannonball just explodes out of the cannon. Boom! It all happens at once. So if you see the cake, at the same time you smile and you're happy that you're about to consume cake. That's the Cannon-Bard theory. You're typically not asked questions on the Cannon-Bard. Usually it's the James Lange. Most often, it's the Stanley Schachter two-factor theory. And this is the one that's the newest, the two-factor theory, also known as the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. But this says that we have two things that cause our emotion, and it's the stimulus and your physical body. So James Lange just said it's your body. Cannon-Bard just said it's the stimulus. Stanley Schachter says, no, it's the stimulus and the body. And you think about both of those things, and then it leads you to your emotion. So if we got our example here, we got the spider. And trembling causes us to think, which causes us to be afraid. So it's this internalization about both of those things, what my body is doing and the stimulus, that causes me to be afraid. All right. I know I go faster for you to write down all these things. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask me right now. Yes, no, you're absolutely right. Yep. No, I don't think so. Well, it depends. It really depends on, well, yeah, if the spider, yeah, okay, yes, if it's a poisonous spider, well, duh. Well, no, that's not even possible. Okay, everybody ready to move on? All right, let's go to Alfred Kinsey. Alfred Kinsey is the theorist who came up with the sexual response cycle and the 4 stages that I wanted to review with you again that has been seen on the AP test before. And they are excitement, the plateau phase, and then orgasm, and then the resolution phase. I do want you to draw this graph. We'll give you time there. Go ahead and, I'm not going to talk anymore about this. Just pause it, reconstruct the graph, be familiar with it. You'll be fine. And then we'll go to Hans Selye as soon as you have the graph drawn and you are ready to continue. All right, we are going on to Hans Selye now. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. That is very relaxing music because I don't want you to be stressed out, right? Which I imagine you kind of are right now with the AP test, especially those of you that have 4 or 5 AP tests that are about to happen. Hans Selye is our stress guy. Only the dead man has no stress. Remember, so as long as you are breathing, you have stress. And he came up with the general adaptation syndrome, which I feel like I shouldn't have to spend too much time here because this is one of your top 120 cards. So hopefully you know it well. Connected to stress, and the 3 stages are alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. And we saw, if you looked at the FRQ list that I gave you, that a couple years ago, or maybe it was even last year, one of the terms on the FRQ was the alarm phase of the general adaptation syndrome. That's what it said, and you had to apply it to the scenario. I forget what the scenario was. But the alarm phase is just when you are first alerted to the stressor. So the moment I give you an assigned essay for the weekend, your body will become alarmed to it. The moment alarming takes place, so the body's aware of it, essentially, it will try to fight it. So your sympathetic nervous system will become engaged, and this is called resistance. And it will fight in fight or flight mode to ward off that stressor, like if it is a dog chasing you. And if you successfully resist, the body will go back to homeostasis, the stressor will go away, and you're good to go. But if you don't, you will become exhausted. It's quite possible that some of you are sick right now because of the general adaptation syndrome. Exhaustion is when your body just wears out. It just can't take it anymore, and you get sick because your immune system will weaken over the time of resistance phase of the general adaptation syndrome. And I know that a few of you were absent on Friday, and over the weekend, over the course of the weekend, you might be getting even more sick or feeling more tired and groggy, and that's normal. And speaking of, for the AP test, make sure you get good sleep. Of course, this is dumb if I'm telling you, and right now it's Sunday night at midnight, and you're listening to this right now because you still have like an hour and a half, 2 hours to go until you're done with this thing. Get some rest. Get sleep on Sunday night. Get a good night's rest. Saturday night, get good night's rest, and then make sure you eat in the morning a healthy meal. Don't just eat all sugar. That will deplete your energy, especially if you're taking 2 tests today. And then make sure you bring a lunch or you provide yourself lunch so that you can eat well. Because I know that you're stressed out right now. I understand it, but you're going to be very well prepared for my test, and you're going to do fine. All right, let's continue on here. Mary Ainsworth, she did the experiment on the strange situation. In fact, we should add that on here. Wherever, strange, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be in the same order on this one because I'm kind of switching you up here if you already started the right. Attachments are an emotional social bond that you have with your primary caregiver, which is usually your mother. Attachments are good. Attachments are very good for children to have when they're healthy. They help develop a self-esteem, self-reliance, all these positive attributes that we see later in life. Trust in the child as they grow. In the strange situation, her experiment, she discovers 3 different types of attachment styles. So not everybody has the same type of attachment to their mother. And in this situation, she would have the mother and the baby in the room, and then she would have a stranger come in. Then the mom would leave, the baby alone with the stranger, see how the baby responds, and then come back. When the mom comes back, that's called the reunion phase of the experiment, and we've seen that on the AP exam before. So that's reunion period when the mom is coming back into the room. In a secure attachment, secure is the only healthy one, which is about 60% of all babies. In a secure attachment, when mom leaves, baby gets really upset, cries, upset. Mom comes back, the baby is very quickly consoled and trusts mom again. And this develops into self-reliance. Doing this for a baby, allowing the baby to trust you and come back and coddle and assure that everything's okay, that will help the baby gain a sense of independence and be able to function on their own without mom slowly over time. And speaking of separation anxiety, that's not normal until about the age of 18 months. You don't see that in a baby. Like, you're not going to see a 3-month-old baby have separation anxiety. 14 to 18 months to 24 months, that's more of the normal period. Then after that, it becomes abnormal again. The unsecure attachment styles are the anxious, ambivalent, or the avoidant. The anxious ambivalent has anxiety. The baby has anxiety through the whole process. So stranger comes in the room, baby gets anxious, clingy to mom. Mom leaves, baby freaks out and cries. Mom comes back, baby continues to freak out and cry. High anxiety. Takes a long time to be consoled and is very distrusting of the mother for quite a while until that trust is earned back again. And this leads to unhealthy attributes, a sense of strong dependency, lack of security in relationships, lack of trust, lack of self-esteem. Avoidant is where the baby is aloof to everything. Stranger comes in, baby doesn't care. Mom leaves, baby doesn't care. Mom comes back, baby doesn't care. And this is usually seen in relationships down the road where the person is just kind of disconnected from everything, doesn't have close relationships. And these are very small percentages of children, but you can see these attributes in your friends right now probably, and it goes back to whether they had a secure or an insecure attachment style. So that is our friend Mary Ainsworth. Diana Baumrind had the 3 parenting styles: authoritarian, permissive, and authoritative. The 4th is the uninvolved, but that's just a parent that's not present, and that leads to some attributes too, but we've never seen that on the AP exam. The one that is most often on the AP test is authoritative, the bottom one. And this is the most healthy. It's the democracy. It's where parents, and listen to this carefully, and you might want to make some notes here for authoritarian. Bad me. Authoritative. Authoritative parents have rules for their children. They have boundaries and expectations, but they're very good at explaining those to their children
allowing the child to have a voice and understanding why these have been put in place for them, not just because I told you so. And knowing that this is the most healthy type, this is what we try to do with Kennedy, our oldest now. We try to explain to her why we discipline, why we have these rules for her, but we always assure her while in doing so that we love her. And we try to never do it out of anger. It's easy to get frustrated with kids sometimes, especially you guys, teenagers, right? You guys a little crazy sometimes. This leads into all types of positive attributes: high self-esteem, a sense of independence, a sense of self-control, which is really, really important when you're getting into your teenage and early 20s. The authoritarian is the dictator, the one that says, it's this way because I told you so. There's never a thorough explanation. There's not a conversation back and forth of understanding. When discipline is dealt, it can be usually done pretty harshly at times, whether it is physical spankings or just being yelled at. And there's not much love that is coming through in that punishment. And punishment can very well be an act of love. You correct behavior because you don't want your child to hurt themselves or get in a bad situation. And permissive is kind of more hands-off, where you're more of a friend with your child than you are a parent. And both the authoritarian leads to rebellion, where you see kids as they get older and they realize that they do start to have choice. They can kind of start to rebel against that type of decision making. But it can also lead them to having a sense of dependency because someone's been making decisions for them their whole life, to some degree. And so that can happen as well. With permissive parenting, usually it develops into a lack of control. The teenager is not able to make good decisions for themselves because they've never learned how. They've kind of been able to do whatever they want. A sense of entitlement can be huge in a permissive child, where they are demanding and expect things and people to do everything for them as well, because that's what their parents have done for them and always trying to please them. An authoritarian parent isn't going to do everything for their child all the time. They're just going to tell their child what to do. And so now when I'm out of the situation, I don't have anybody telling me what to do. Rebellion can happen and things can get pretty crazy pretty quick because nobody's telling me to have to go to class anymore. And I'm tired of being told what to do, etc. So that's Baumrine's research on parenting styles. I think it's time, before we get to Erikson, I think it's time to do a cheetah test. Oh yeah. Let's get them cheaters. Let's get them cheetahs. All right, what are we going to do here? Come on, we got to think. We got to come up with something real good that they will never know. Let's see. No, I don't want you to lick your paper. That's a good, I don't know, that's kind of weird. No, blood, no, that's not a good idea. I don't want blood on your paper. Ooh, let's do something with color. All right. You can use, you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to find a green, something green that can mark your paper. Green pencil, green crayon, green marker, green something, right? It can be light green, dark green, forest green, I don't care, but it has to be green, okay? Here is what you're going to do. See that 10 on the bottom of your paper, okay? I want you to put an X through it with your green marker or color crayon. See, some of you are going to have a very difficult time finding this green thing right now that you're going to mark with. You better do it too. But a cheater, when they're trying to copy this thing as quickly as they can, they're going to see that and go, oh man, I got to put an X there. It's got to be in green. And they might have a real hard time finding a green crayon. We're going to get them cheetahs. Man, I hate cheaters. You know what? Yeah, okay, I am using a little bit of projection. Have I ever told you a story about when I cheated? So I did cheat. I cheated once. I'll finish the story later. Let's continue with Erikson. I did cheat once. I did. Let's. Oh man, I feel so ashamed. Erik Erikson. Erikson has the psychosocial stages of development. Okay, how we develop socially as we progress through life. Erikson was a psychoanalytic, so heavily focusing on how childhood experiences can affect us as we age. And this is a schedule that we continue to go through as we do progress through age. You need to know the order because you could be asked stage 1, stage 5, stage 7, stage 8, stage 2, and have to explain what's going on in that stage. I think
in FRQ last year, they put identity versus role confusion, and you had to explain what that was. And that's, of course, in your teenage years, and that's the stage you should start with memorizing. Let's just talk. We're not going to talk about all 8 of these, but let's just talk about that one first. As a teenager right now, know where you're at. You're in identity versus role confusion. This is when you are discovering who you are. And it is usually not until your 20s, early 20s, where you really start to gain a sense of who you are, because you're coming out on your own now. You're not living with your parents anymore. And you're getting to make your own choices. You don't have to think like they do anymore. You're away from the friends that you grew up around in high school. Most of you will be. And you start to discover who you are, or you don't. And you're just totally confused and you don't find your identity. And that can be, of course, a very scary place to be in as well. And that's your social place. Either you're finding yourself and you know what you want to do socially with your life, or you don't. And this leads to the next stage of being intimate, hopefully, with someone, where you find a relationship, someone who you will share your life with and have a deep relationship that's healthy. Or you're going to be in isolation, and this is later 20s, where you're alone, in early 30s, where you don't have an intimate relationship, or you struggle to connect. I mean, you might have boyfriends and girlfriends, and many of them, but you're not going to be satisfied socially. This is the unhealthy side of stage 6. Stage 1, you should definitely memorize: trust versus mistrust. And this is because parents are taking care of you. They have to. I mean, otherwise you'll die. And if they're not neglecting you, you learn that you can trust the people that you should be able to trust. And if they are, then you learn that you should trust no one. Because if I can't trust my parents, logically, why would I trust anyone else? Although that's a very illogical statement. Because you didn't, and hear me here too, this is kind of cognitive reasoning. You didn't choose your parents. You had no control over that whatsoever. No control. There are people in this world who make horrible choices, who do horrible things. Guess what? Those people have kids. So you had nothing to do with that. And you don't have to follow in the same footsteps either. You can make different choices as you age and progress in life. So it is illogical to think that you couldn't trust other people, because I can't trust my parents, because you might have been dealt a pretty bad card with the parents that you got. And there are some wonderful people out there who, of course, you can trust. But that usually that can take some help psychologically. So go through all those stages on your own, but most commonly we see level 1, 5, 6, and 8 tested. And 8 is integrity and despair, where at the end of your life you can look back on it and you feel good about the life that you lived, or you don't. And you're in complete despair and misery on the life that you have led. Carol Gilligan. This makes no sense why I put Carol Gilligan here before we talk about Kohlberg. So go forward to the next page and let's talk about Lawrence Kohlberg. Then we'll go back to Gilligan. Then we'll go to Harry Harlan. Okay. Lawrence Kohlberg did the theory on moral development, how we develop morally as we progress through life. And he had 3 stages: the pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. You do not advance necessarily with these. You could be stuck in the first pre-conventional level your entire life. And some of you will be. And you can advance to the post-conventional. So pre-conventional is based on rewards and punishments, which means when we're talking about moral decisions being made, you're basing them off what you're going to get if I do this, or what I can avoid if I don't do it. So I'm not going to cheat because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get a 0 on this test if my teacher catches me cheating. I'm not going to wear my hat in the hallway because I don't want to get in trouble and get detention. Or I am going to be nice to this person who dropped their books in the hallway in hopes that I will make a new friend and get a reward out of it. I am going to pull over and help this person on the side of the road in an accident in hopes that they give me reward money for doing so. I don't know. Whatever it might be. The conventional level is society's rules and your relationships and what they expect you to do. So we can talk about the laws of the land. Society has set up rules that you must follow. And if you're driven your moral decisions by following those rules, then you're in level 2. Or what your relationships expect from you, the rules that your parents have set forth for you. Now listen, let's say your parents give you a curfew of 10 o'clock tonight. Okay? Obeying curfew and getting home at 10 because you're afraid of being grounded is level 1, pre-conventional.
Obeying your parents because they told you you need to be home at 10 is level 2, conventional. It's completely different. It's a completely different motivation. Post-conventional is a higher morale, humanity type of decision where you're thinking of what's best for everyone in society. So here you, like on your own, you say, I'm going to be home at 10 o'clock tonight because I know as a teenager, I'm more likely to maybe get in a car accident if I'm out after 10, that bad things happen to other people when they stay out this late with friends, and I'm going to make a good decision and go home tonight because I know that this is the best choice for me and for others who are out there. So those are three different levels. Remember this? The scenario that he came up with was the Heinz scenario, where a guy was trying to save his wife from dying of cancer with a drug. And then you're asked at the end, should he have taken the drug? Your yes or no has nothing to do with which level you would be put into it. Your explanation for why you said yes or no has everything to do with why you would be put in that level. All right, so what's your motivation for your moral decisions? Now we go back up to Carol Gilligan because she's a critic of Kohlberg. She's a critic of Kohlberg. First of all, Kohlberg only studied boys. And she said that this theory doesn't apply. Girls are different. That girls make their decisions, their moral decisions, based on different things than boys do. They're not driven as much by rewards and punishments. They're much more driven by relationships than males are, to be connected, as opposed to males wanting to just protect themselves. So she is a heavy critic of Kohlberg. She said that he only researched young boys, which he did. And it was a very small sample group of only a couple hundred young boys. So that's the criticism, and that's something that we should know too when research is done. Did he have sample bias? Absolutely. He absolutely did, and then he generalized it to the entire population. So Carol Gilligan is someone that the College Board wants you to be aware of, and we've seen her on the AP exam as well. All right. And now let's go to Harry Harlow. He did the experiment on the monkeys, and this is about contact comfort and more about attachments. And what helps our attachment? Is it more nature or nurturing? And so he had these two fake monkeys in the cage, a wired monkey, where it had attached to it a bottle, where the monkey, every time it wanted to eat, it would have to go to the wired monkey, which was uncomfortable, to feed. And then there was another monkey that was soft and made out of cloth. And the monkey would go there when it just wanted to chill and relax. And it would spend the majority of its time with the soft monkey. Well, the question is which one did it love more? The one that was nurturing it with the softness, or the one that was feeding it? And logically, you might think the one that is providing my biological need is the one I'm going to be more attached to, as opposed to my relational need. Well, that's absolutely not true. And in his experiment, he scares the monkey to see which one the monkey runs to. And in his hypothesis, he believes that the one that the monkey runs to is the one that it loves more, which is going to be the soft monkey, and it is. So nurture does impact attachments more so than nature. Feeding and physical needs are important, but if you're not being emotionally connected to and coddled as a baby, it can have some pretty serious psychological effects on you later in life if you're not held and rocked and comforted in that way. So Harry Harlow leads us to helping mothers form healthy attachments with their babies when they're born in hospitals today. Okay? And that is Harlow.
I want to get through the next couple people pretty quick. We got to pick up some speed, right? Conrad Lorenz. The term is imprinting. Imprinting is not an attachment. It is a bond that is formed purely for biological needs and is done based off of movement. So where babies form attachments, emotional, social bonds out of nurturing and connection, imprinting is done specifically by birds and ducks based on what is moving around them when they hatch out of their egg, and that's who they look to provide their biological needs. Not all species have emotional, social bonds like humans and monkeys do. So that is imprinting based on movement. Yeah, that was quick. We got through that person real fast. Or sorry, I guess you can pause it. All right. Jean Piaget. Let's first go through the stages. All right, then we'll get up to object permanence and conservation. Those are the two that you're most likely to be tested on. His theory is on cognitive development, how our brain changes over time. And this is one of your top 120 note cards too. I would imagine that you have these 4 stages memorized. I hope that you do already. And same with object permanence and conservation. So I don't feel like we want to spend a lot of time here. But sensory motor is the first stage where your brain is working off in your senses, taking information in, and moving your body. Those two things. So it makes sense that this is the first stage, sensory motor. Pre-operational is the second, concrete operational is the third, and then the fourth is formal operational, where we are all at now. Okay, so pre-operationals, 1 to a couple years old, and then concrete operationals like 5 to 11 years old, and then formal operationals onward. And ages aren't important; they're approximate here. Object permanence is when you have object permanence, you know an object exists when you can't see it anymore. So like the peekaboo thing. If I do peekaboo to you, you want me to do it? No, I'll spare you. But if I do peekaboo, you know that my face is still behind my hands, right? When a child doesn't have object permanence, they don't know that the object still exists. They develop this in the first stage. This is the most heavily tested Piaget concept, period, object permanence. The second most heavily tested is conservation. This is the knowledge of knowing that just because the mass or the volume changes, the amount does not. So if I pour a fat glass of water into a skinny glass, the amount of water hasn't changed. If I take a ball of Play-Doh and I smush it down, the amount of Play-Doh hasn't changed. If I take a piece of pizza and I cut it in half, I don't have more pizza. I have the same. But until kids have developed conservation, they don't know this. You change the shape, they think you've changed the volume of it or the mass. I think I said that incorrectly or misspoke earlier. So that's what we're talking about here. Conservation is in the third stage. The third stage starts with a C, concrete, operational. Conservation starts with a C. So that's one mnemonic way that might help you remember that. Have the stages memorized, no object permanence, no conservation. I guarantee you're going to see a question from this slide on Monday's test. All right. Lev Vygotsky, the zone of proximal development, kind of disagreed with Piaget a little bit and said, no, it's not. It doesn't have to be based on ages. Kids can learn conservation at earlier ages than what Piaget claimed if they were taught in the right zone of development. So we look at your mental age, and if you have a mental age of a second grader, you should be taught at a second grade level. But if you have the mental age of a fourth grader, we shouldn't be teaching you at a second grade level. We should be advancing you into fourth grade level and be challenging you so that you could learn principles like conservation at a higher, faster rate. Piaget was looking at norms for kids. And both of Piaget's and Vygotsky's research have huge impact on education today, and they have on education. But anyways, that's the zone of proximal development. We're talking about school and all that good stuff. All right. We're just going to go 2 more slides, and then we are going to end part 2. Alfred Adler was a neo-Freudian psychoanalytic. So Freudian, but neo-Freudian, where neo-Freudians broke away from the emphasis on the libido. And I'll talk more about the libido in part 3 when we start with Freud. We're going to spend some time on Freud and go over him quite a bit. So we'll kind of come back to these psychoanalytic ideas. So I don't want to talk about that yet. I just want to talk about Adler's theory of inferiority complex. In childhood, especially if you have older siblings, you have what he calls an inferiority complex. You feel inferior or less than the older people in your family. So you have this tendency to try to compensate yourself and always want to look better and make yourself better to make up for that inferiority complex. And it can affect you for the rest of your entire life. And birth order is a big part of this. If you're the first child, you're probably less likely to have inferiority complex. But if you're the third or fourth or fifth, then you're more likely to have it because you have so many people who are doing. Listen, when you're 5, you can't do the things that your 12-year-old brother or sister can do. So they are superior to you in many ways. And you can develop this sense of inferiority. So we'll come back and we'll talk about neo-Freudians and psychoanalysis much more in part 3. All right? We're going to end this part part with Paul Costa and Robert McCrae. And it's just to remind you of the big 5 traits. One thing I want to put next to this big 5 traits is that they're innate. They believe that you're born. Anytime you see the word trait theorists believe that you are born with that trait. Okay? The big 5 theorists say that you are born with 5. Openness, conscientiousness, extroverted, agreeableness, and neuroticism. I feel like that's spelled wrong, right? I don't know. And neuroticism. You could be asked a question about any one of those. The heavily tested of all traits is extroverted or introverted. Extroverted means you're outgoing, you're more sociable, you're more friendly. You come across more friendly because you're easier to talk to. Introverted, you're shy, you keep to yourself more, you're less sociable. Okay. Agreeableness, and then neuroticism. Neuroticism is emotional instability. So you worry a lot, you're negative, you always think the worst is going to happen, which makes you more likely to be depressed or have anxiety as well if you tend to be more neurotic. So know these terms, know the big 5. OCEAN is the acronym to help you remember. And OCEAN for openness, C for conscientiousness, E for extroverted, A for agreeableness, and N for neuroticism. And that is where we end the recording for part